I really would like everybody who is serious about non-dual realization, seeking awakening, enlightenment, or maybe you're a finder and you've recognized presence and you're noticing that there's still some suffering around. I can't impress upon you how important I think that these somatic tests can be for certain people if you don't know what's driving you. If you don't see that some of the very things that feel so true to us in terms of non-dual insights, we may be identifying with them to stay safe from what we buried. But because this conditioning is buried, we don't know that the reason that we're tied to or interested in a particular phrase or pointer or teaching is because we're staying safe with that. That literally our trauma is driving our spiritual path, whether we're a seeker or a finder, until it isn't anymore. But the only way that trauma doesn't drive us is when that trauma, that repression held deeply in the body, is made conscious so that it no longer creates the suffering and the bypass that you see in non-duality. So I'm just going to do a few tests, and this is for on black screen, obviously, because I want you to focus not on me, but coming down into your body. So if you're not in a place where you can do this right now, like if you're driving or something, or in a busy place, then just hit stop and come back to this. Because again, if you're on a path interested in this subject, I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to know this unless you just want to blindly stay in the bypass and continue suffering, which I think probably part of you does. That's the repression that wants to stay safe and get love. But what about you? What about what you really are that hears these non-dual teachings and resonates at a deep level because there's truth to them? But if we keep being run on trauma, we can't embody that truth. Okay, so here we go. And I have to set up some context with each test. And the test is very simple. If you have energy on something, it means you're believing something that you didn't know. And that programming is driving something about your spiritual path, process, or realization. So the context first is just to notice what we teachers do is the paradigm that we use often, not always, is there's awareness and then things come and go to awareness. Keeping it that simple, like words, pictures, feelings, sensations arise and fall, but the presence remains no matter what arises and falls. It's a good pointer to sort of get us started on this subject of discovering what we are, but there's a massive duality in it, which is there is no actual division between awareness and what arises to awareness. That when we say non-dual, that's what we mean, not two. But in the pointers and the teachings, there's a two-ness set up. And if you keep hearing it, it can attach to a mechanism that's very old in you that's keeping you safe. How do you discover it? Is that I want you just to sit in that paradigm for a moment, just noticing how there's the awareness and things come and go to it. We're not going to sit for long, but just notice that that's really your experience. So you're verifying something that feels true. Maybe that a thought is arising. You hear it. Stop and notice it. That thought, as you hear it from awareness, is now an object in awareness. And just allowing that object, that thought falls away to awareness. The same is true of a feeling. If just a feeling arises to awareness and it's allowed, it's seen as something appearing to the awareness. And this is how we talk as teachers. And then the feeling goes away. So with that paradigm here, I want you to go into your body where you hold contraction. And I want you to write down something, so you may have to type into your phone some notes or take notes here. So I'll give you a moment to get your phone or notepad. But just want to feel into, bring awareness to that sensation where there's contraction. Notice the space around it. Let it be. And then say this: I don't get anything out of saying that everything arises and falls to awareness. That's all. I don't get anything. I get nothing out of saying or hearing people say that everything arises or things arise and fall to awareness. And then just only trust the body. The mind will lie. When you look from awareness, it looks like it's really true and you're not trying to escape. But when you go into the body and you say, I don't get anything out of resting as awareness and allowing everything. That's another way of saying it. If you have a contraction right there or a constriction that responds, then you're getting something out of that paradigm. And we need to explore that, because as many teachers will tell you, you don't get anything out of freedom. The ego is what gets love and approval and stays safe. But what you really are, to discover that, you don't get anything out of it. And that's why it's freedom. So if you got any energy on that, that means your trauma is attached to that paradigm, which means that within that paradigm, it's going to be very difficult, perhaps, for you to end suffering, because you get programmed over time to actually believe that, in a way, that the things arising and falling to awareness are somehow separate from awareness, but they are awareness. Everything is, there's no separation. So to say or hear that constantly and to feed that into the brain, that everything arises and falls to awareness, could feed, as you see, a mechanism of safety. And you can only trust your body. If you find this, I would say go do repression work, because that paradigm won't save you from that. It's keeping you safe from the repression. To sit and think that everything arises to awareness. Now you might say, well, everything arises and falls to awareness. Yes, but only when you do repression work, because the buried emotions don't arise, first of all, and they produce the stuff that does arise. This is the science. Emotional repression produces suffering. It comes into awareness. We allow it. It falls away, but we never got to the buried stuff there. So that buried stuff creates that contraction if you had a response there. If you say, or you can say it this way, what do I get out of saying that everything arises and falls to awareness? What do I get? And then just write it down. No matter what comes, and you just listen to the inner body. You drop that into the inner body and you listen to the response. What do I get out of saying that everything arises or things arise and fall to awareness? Because although it's ultimately true, it's not true for people with repression. So people with repression are getting something out of that. And there's the bypass. Staying safe, getting love, approval. You wouldn't know it if somebody doesn't point it out. And then the next test, this is a second test, it just has to do with any insight that you have. So there's so many. So pick an insight. It's something that you really feel to be true. And although it would also be nice if you pick something that you know you're kind of attached to, but you don't know why. You want to trust your body, but like people through the years have said things like, well, there's no self. And although that's an insight, it's just something that happens along the way, that seeing, and you can land on it and then start believing it, and then that protects you from something that you've buried. But it could be a different insight. Just pick your own spiritual program or insight, pull it up, feel into the body where you hold energy, get ready to write stuff down. What do I get out of saying there's no self? Or what do I get out of this insight? And listen to the inner body and write that down. If you have energy that as if your body's saying, yeah, you get something, then you listen and you can hear it in the mind because you've prompted it up with that inquiry. Now, if you're wondering, well, what do I do with all this? Well, what you get out of it is you stay safe. Even if it's not written on the page, you'll see it later. When you're more skillful, you stay safe from the buried stuff by believing that. And you may not even know that you believe it. And you get love and approval, or you may, because if you say certain things that are wise, people go, oh, wow, you're pretty cool. And then the system registers that. And it holds on to that because that's the survival of the separate self. Ironically, coming from attachment to non-dual insights. I mean, and here's a good one, is the awakening shift can happen. Like we can shift to presence, but then if we're afraid to embody that, we might hold on to that. So try this as you feel into the body. What do I get out of being awareness? You can't get anything out of that if it's embodied, but if you feel something in your body, what do I get out of just recognizing that I'm the awareness? If you're getting anything out of it, that pointer or that thing is being used for self-protection. Just write down what it is. You may get a hit on certain things and not other things. Here's another sort of different way of looking at it. We might have like the conscious intention that to wake up or be free, but then our body has a different intention. So like we're seeking awakening or healing, and we say to ourselves, well, that's what I'm looking for. But we don't trust that the body has a different agenda. So here's a good way to just start to see it. Feeling into the body. I can be awake in this lifetime. Just see what happens. I can be awake in this lifetime. Feel any energy that seems to say no, or I can heal. If healing is your thing, see if the body is saying no. There's the mechanism that wants to keep us safe. If you feel that in your body. So no matter what you say at the conscious level, that's what's driving things. And that's why the seeking continues for many of you, because you can't see it. That you're exactly what you're getting out of it. But the seeking comes from what you've buried, and it's safer to seek than it is to feel and express what's true to the people that you love. So by seeking, you get their love and approval because you keep the ego identity in place, and it keeps you safe from what you've buried. But how would you know that unless you asked, what do I get out of this? And then really journaled that. But that's just the beginning, because when you journal it, you see there's something there, but it takes inquiry to get to the unconscious repression. This is all driven by unprocessed fear and emotional repression. That's the body. And the conditioning that's doing it all is hidden in that sensation. We haven't even brought it up yet. All you're doing is discovery to discover that the system is using perhaps non-dual stuff to stay safe. And then here's something. Does anybody listening think that they're done? This is a shame-inducing thing, because if you've had a realization, you don't tell people, I'm done, because most people kind of see it as narcissistic if you're not in fact done. But there can be stuff that we haven't worked out around that. So just do this as you feel into the body. I don't need to be done. See, there's the seeking energy. Just to understand it, there's a need to be done. And then people who see themselves as finders, even if they don't see a self there, if you go into the body and you say, I don't get anything out of being done. I don't get anything out of not processing anything anymore, if that's your experience. And see what comes. Or what do I get out of believing I'm done, or that there's nothing else for me to process? See what comes. Okay, so what do you do with this information? Well, here's what you wouldn't want to do. You wouldn't want to take this test, write that stuff down, and ignore it, because trauma and repression drive everything. But that doesn't mean that the information that you got will lead to skillful inquiry, because if you can see that you're hiding some of this from yourself, it's going to take skill. So I've been laying out the path here, Free Non-Duality on YouTube. And if you follow the videos in that playlist, I'm giving you inquiries that are taking you away from this bypass and taking you to eventually to the conditioning in the body. We work up to it because your system, as you can see, has another agenda. So we have to work with that unconsciousness in the inquiry that we do here. And the best thing to do is to go to 3D inquiry with us, because we've already corrected the bypass with the 3D inquiry. We're going to show you how to inquire so that you don't keep doing this, where, well, you're bypassing, or you don't see that you're holding on to awakening or things or pointers to stay safe from what you've buried. Once you know, it's a matter of just gaining skill and understanding it more, and then you can end it. So I'll put some links in the comments for people who just want to get started if they see the bypass. And then for everybody else, if you're just curious to learn more, after taking this test, go and take our repression test, which just tells you, what the repression is that drives all this. And then you're on our newsletter, and we can start educating you about our resources. Thank you for listening.